I'm Amanda Chen, 38, a financial analyst from Austin, Texas, and I never thought that my husband's position as HOA board treasurer would lead me to discover he was using community funds to subsidize luxury accommodations for his mistress. What happened when I exposed their elaborate fraud scheme at Riverside Towers will shock you, and the federal charges that followed destroyed both their lives forever. It was a sweltering Tuesday afternoon in July, the kind where Austin's summer heat makes the asphalt shimmer, and everyone with sense stays indoors, when I first noticed the discrepancy in our HOA financial statements. I was reviewing the quarterly reports for Riverside Towers, our luxury high-rise condominium complex overlooking Lady Bird Lake, when something in the numbers made me pause. My husband David had been the HOA board treasurer for 3 years, managing a community budget of over $2 million annually. As a financial analyst who specialized in forensic accounting for corporate clients, I'd developed an eye for irregularities that most people would miss. And what I was seeing in these financial statements was setting off every alarm bell in my professional instincts. David and I had been married for 9 years, living in a beautiful 3-bedroom unit on the 15th floor of Riverside Towers. He worked as a commercial property manager, and I ran my own forensic accounting consultancy from our home office. To our neighbors, we probably looked like the ideal power couple, successful, engaged in community leadership, and financially secure. But perfection, I was about to learn, can be the most dangerous illusion of all. The first red flag was subtle, a series of maintenance adjustments that had reduced the monthly HOA fees for Unit 2801, the Penthouse apartment, by exactly 50% over the past 8 months. In a building where penthouse fees ran $3,200 per month, this represented a savings of nearly $13,000 for whoever was living there. I cross-referenced the resident directory and discovered that Unit 2801 had been leased 6 months ago to someone named Victoria Sterling. The name wasn't familiar, but what caught my attention was that her lease application had been approved without the usual board review process that governed all penthouse rentals. "David," I called from my office, "can you come look at something?" He appeared in the doorway, still in his work clothes, loosening his tie. "What's up, babe?" "I'm reviewing the quarterly HOA financials, and I'm seeing some unusual adjustments for the penthouse unit. Do you know anything about maintenance issues that would justify reducing someone's fees by 50%? David's expression shifted almost imperceptibly, but I caught it. That micro-expression of someone who's been caught off guard by an unexpected question. "Which unit?" he asked, moving closer to look at my computer screen. 2801, the penthouse. Someone named Victoria Sterling. "Oh, right." David's voice was carefully casual. "She's been having persistent HVAC issues. The board approved the fee reduction while we work out the maintenance problems." I frowned. That's a pretty significant reduction for HVAC issues, and I don't see any record of board meetings or votes approving this adjustment. "It was handled in executive session," David said quickly. "Confidential resident matters, you know how it is." Something about his tone felt wrong, but I couldn't put my finger on what exactly. David had always been straightforward about HOA business, often discussing community issues and board decisions with me. This sudden caginess was unusual. If you've ever felt that nagging sense that someone you trust is hiding something important, you know how unsettling it can be. Hit that like button if you've experienced that gut feeling that something just doesn't add up, because trusting those instincts can sometimes save you from much bigger problems. Over the next few days, I couldn't stop thinking about the penthouse situation. As someone who investigated financial irregularities for a living, I'd learned to follow the trail whenever something seemed off. So I decided to do some digging on my own. I started by reviewing the HOA meeting minutes from the past year. Executive sessions were noted, but there was no record of any vote to reduce fees for Unit 2801 or any discussion of HVAC issues requiring such a dramatic adjustment. Next, I checked our building's maintenance records. As an owner, I had the right to review these documents, and what I found made my stomach drop. There were no work orders for HVAC repairs in Unit 2801, no service calls, no parts orders, no contractor invoices. According to the maintenance logs, the penthouse had required no significant repairs in the past 18 months. David had lied to me about the reason for the fee reduction. That evening, I decided to take a more direct approach. "David, I've been thinking about the penthouse situation, and I'd like to meet this Victoria Sterling. If she's having ongoing maintenance issues, maybe I can help resolve them through my contacts in commercial property management." David was reading on his tablet and didn't look up. "I don't think that's necessary, Amanda. The board is handling it. But as treasurer, you should want to resolve expensive ongoing issues quickly. Every month, we're essentially paying her $2,600 to live in our most valuable unit. It's temporary," he said, his voice getting slightly sharp. "The situation will resolve itself soon." "How soon? And what exactly is the nature of these HVAC problems?" David set down his tablet and looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Something between annoyance and what looked almost like fear. Amanda, why are you so interested in this? It's just routine board business. Because 50% fee reductions aren't routine, David. In my professional opinion, this kind of adjustment requires proper documentation and oversight. Your professional opinion? His tone was mocking now. This is HOA business, not one of your corporate fraud cases. The phrase hit me like a physical blow. Corporate fraud cases. That's exactly what this was starting to look like. That night, after David fell asleep, I accessed our building's security system online. As HOA treasurer, David had given me administrative credentials months ago so I could help with financial reconciliation of contractor visits and deliveries. What I discovered in the security footage made my blood run cold. For the past 6 months, David had been visiting Unit 2801 regularly, sometimes during lunch breaks, sometimes in the evenings when he claimed to be working late, and frequently on weekends when he said he was handling board business. But the most damning evidence was from 3 weeks ago. Security footage of David and a woman I didn't recognize sharing an intimate moment in the Penthouse elevator. They were kissing, holding hands, acting like lovers, not like an HOA treasurer helping a resident with maintenance issues. Victoria Sterling wasn't just David's tenant, she was his mistress, and he'd been using his position as HOA treasurer to subsidize her luxury lifestyle with community funds. I spent the rest of that night going through financial records with the methodical precision that had made me successful in forensic accounting. What I uncovered was a carefully constructed fraud scheme that went far beyond just reduced HOA fees. Using his access to community accounts, David had been reclassifying legitimate building expenses to create budget surpluses, then using those surpluses to justify fee reductions for Unit 2801. He'd coded personal expenses as emergency building maintenance, and had even been billing the HOA for services that were never performed. The total fraud, over 8 months, exceeded $47,000. David wasn't just cheating on our marriage. He was stealing from our entire community to fund his affair, and he'd been using his position of trust to do it. If you're feeling disgusted by this level of betrayal, you're not alone. When someone you trust uses their authority to steal from an entire community, it affects everyone. Leave a comment below about a time when someone in a position of trust let you down. Your experiences help other people recognize warning signs and protect themselves. The next morning, David left for work as usual, kissing me goodbye and telling me he loved me like nothing had changed, but everything had changed. I now knew that the man I'd been married to for 9 years was a thief and a liar who was willing to steal from our neighbors to support his extramarital relationship. I called in sick to work and spent the day documenting everything I'd discovered. Financial records, security footage, maintenance logs, meeting minutes. I assembled a comprehensive case file that would have made my corporate clients proud. Then, I made a decision that would change both our lives forever. I called the Travis County District Attorney's Office and requested a meeting with their white-collar crime division. 2 days later, I was sitting across from Assistant District Attorney Maria Rodriguez, a sharp woman in her 40s who specialized in financial fraud cases. "Mrs. Chen," she said, reviewing the documents I'd provided, "this is one of the most well-documented fraud cases I've seen from a civilian complainant. Your husband has been embezzling from your homeowners association to subsidize his girlfriend's housing costs." "What happens next?" I asked. "We'll need to conduct our own investigation, but based on what you've shown me, we're looking at multiple felony charges. Embezzlement, fraud, breach of fiduciary duty. If the total amount exceeds $50,000, these become first-degree felonies carrying significant prison time." My stomach churned. Despite everything David had done, the reality of him facing prison was overwhelming. "There's more," Ada Rodriguez continued. "You mentioned he's been billing the HOA for services never rendered. That's additional fraud. And if he's been using his position to benefit his girlfriend, she could be charged as an accessory. Victoria Sterling might face charges too. If she knew the fee reductions were fraudulent, yes. Accepting stolen property, conspiracy to commit fraud. The charges could be extensive. I left the DA's office feeling like I was living in someone else's nightmare. 24 hours earlier, my biggest concern had been quarterly financial reports. Now I was cooperating with a criminal investigation against my own husband. That evening, David came home with flowers, roses, my favorite, and a bottle of wine. "Thought we could have a romantic dinner," he said, kissing my cheek. "I feel like we haven't been connecting lately." The irony was suffocating. David was trying to romance me while simultaneously stealing from our community to fund his affair with another woman. "That sounds nice," I said, accepting the flowers. "How was your day?" "Busy. Lots of HOA issues to resolve. Board stuff, you know. Anything interesting?" "Just the usual. Maintenance requests, budget reviews, resident complaints. I watched him lie to my face with the same ease he'd probably been using for months. How had I missed this? How had I been so blind to what kind of man I'd married? 3 days later, the Travis County Sheriff's Department executed search warrants on our apartment, David's office, and Unit 2801. I'd been given advance notice and had arranged to be out of town visiting my sister in Dallas. David called me that evening, his voice shaking with rage and panic. "Amanda, what the hell did you do? The police searched our home. They arrested me at work. Everyone saw them lead me out in handcuffs." "I reported the fraud, David." Silence. Then, "What fraud?" "The $50,000 you stole from our HOA to pay your girlfriend's rent." More silence. Longer this time. "You don't understand," he finally said. "It's not what it looks like." "Then explain it to me. Explain how Victoria Sterling deserves to live in a penthouse for half price. Explain the security footage of you two kissing in the elevator. Explain the fake service invoices and the manipulated budget reports." "I can't talk about this over the phone," he said. "I need a lawyer." "Yes," I agreed. "You do." The investigation moved quickly once law enforcement was involved. David had been surprisingly careless about covering his tracks, perhaps assuming that his role as treasurer would protect him from scrutiny, or maybe just believing that I would never look closely at the HOA finances. Victoria Sterling was arrested 3 days after David. According to the police reports I received through the DA's office, she had been fully aware that her fee reductions were fraudulent. Text messages between her and David discussed the arrangement explicitly, with Victoria even joking about living in luxury on the community's dime. But the most damaging evidence came from David's own records. Investigators found a spreadsheet on his laptop titled V's Account, detailing every fraudulent transaction, every fake invoice, every manipulated budget item he'd used to fund Victoria's subsidized lifestyle. He'd been treating our community's money like his personal slush fund, and he'd been stupid enough to keep detailed records of every crime. The arraignment was surreal. Sitting in that Austin courtroom, watching David stand before a judge in an orange jumpsuit felt like watching someone else's life unfold. This wasn't the man I'd married 9 years ago. Or maybe it was, and I'd just never seen this side of him before. Ada Rodriguez had been right about the charges. David faced 3 first-degree felonies: embezzlement over $50,000, fraud, and breach of fiduciary duty. Victoria faced charges of conspiracy to commit fraud and accepting stolen property. The local media picked up the story quickly. HOA treasurer embezzles $50K to fund Mistress's luxury lifestyle was the headline in the Austin American-Statesman. Within days, our story was all over local news and social media. The shame was overwhelming at first. Our neighbors, people I'd lived near for years, now knew that my husband had been stealing from them and cheating on me simultaneously. Some avoided eye contact in the elevators. Others offered awkward condolences that felt more like pity than support. But gradually, I realized that most people didn't blame me for David's crimes. If anything, they were grateful that I'd been the one to expose the fraud and stop it from continuing. Amanda, our neighbor, Mrs. Patterson from the 14th floor, told me one day, "You saved us all from being victimized even more." That took courage. The HOA board held an emergency meeting to address the financial damage. As the spouse of the accused embezzler, I offered to resign from all community involvement, but the board voted unanimously to ask me to stay and help with the financial recovery process. "You're the one who caught this," Board President Michael Torres said. "We need your expertise to make sure nothing like this ever happens again." The trial lasted 3 weeks. David's defense attorney tried to argue that the fee reductions were legitimate board decisions, but the evidence was overwhelming. Security footage, financial records, text messages between David and Victoria, and testimony from multiple witnesses painted a clear picture of systematic fraud. Victoria's attorney attempted to claim she'd been manipulated and hadn't known the fee reductions were fraudulent, but her text messages told a different story. Living like a queen on other people's money was one message prosecutors read aloud in court. The most difficult moment was when I had to testify about discovering the fraud and reporting it to authorities. David's attorney tried to portray me as a vindictive wife seeking revenge, but Ada Rodriguez guided me through testimony that focused on the financial evidence and my professional obligation to report suspected fraud. "Mrs. Chen," she asked, "when you discovered these financial irregularities, what was your primary concern?" "That members of our community were being stolen from," I replied. "That someone in a position of trust was abusing that trust for personal gain." "Did your personal relationship with the defendant influence your decision to report the fraud?" "My personal relationship with David made it harder to report, not easier. But the evidence was clear, and I had a responsibility to protect the community from ongoing theft." The jury deliberated for 6 hours. David was found guilty on all counts. Victoria was convicted of conspiracy and accepting stolen property. During the sentencing hearing, several HOA members gave victim impact statements describing how David's theft had affected the community. Reserve funds that should have been available for emergency repairs had been depleted. Legitimate maintenance projects had been delayed because of budget shortfalls created by David's manipulations. Mr. Chen held a position of trust, Judge Patricia Williams said during sentencing. He was elected by his neighbors to manage their collective resources responsibly. Instead, he systematically stole from the community to fund a personal relationship. This represents a profound betrayal of trust that strikes at the heart of community cooperation. David was sentenced to 8 years in state prison and ordered to pay full restitution of $52,000. Victoria received 3 years and was ordered to pay $15,000 in restitution for her share of the fraud. As they led David away in handcuffs, he looked at me one last time. I saw no remorse in his eyes, only resentment that he'd been caught. The divorce proceedings were straightforward. David's criminal conviction eliminated any possibility of him contesting asset division or seeking alimony. I kept our condo, our savings, and my business. David kept his legal fees and his prison sentence. Today, 18 months later, I'm still living at Riverside Towers, but in a different unit, a smaller place on the 10th floor that feels like home, in a way our old apartment never did again. The Penthouse has been released at full market rate, and the proceeds are helping to replenish the reserve funds David depleted. I've been elected to the HOA board as treasurer, a position the community asked me to take despite my initial reluctance. We've implemented new financial oversight procedures, including mandatory external audits and dual signature requirements for all expenditures over $500. My forensic accounting business has grown significantly since the trial. Apparently, being known as someone willing to expose fraud even when it involves family has given me a reputation for integrity that potential clients value. I've been hired by several other HOAs to review their financial practices and ensure proper oversight. I've started dating again, carefully but hopefully. My new boyfriend, James, is a software developer who's refreshingly honest about everything from his work schedule to his Netflix viewing habits. He knows my story and has never made me feel damaged or suspicious because of David's betrayal. "You protected an entire community from a criminal," James told me recently. "That's something to be proud of, not ashamed of." David is currently serving his sentence at the Huntsville State Prison. He's eligible for parole in 5 years, though I don't spend much time thinking about his release date. Victoria was released after 18 months and has reportedly moved back to California where her family lives. The most important lesson I learned from this experience is that trust and verification aren't mutually exclusive. I can love someone while still maintaining professional skepticism about financial irregularities. I can support my community while also protecting myself from those who would abuse positions of authority. Financial crimes like embezzlement destroy more than just bank accounts. They destroy the trust that communities need to function. When someone abuses a position like HOA treasurer, they're not just stealing money. They're stealing the confidence people need to participate in collective decision-making and community governance. But recovery is possible. Our HOA is stronger now than it was before David's fraud, with better oversight, more transparency, and a deeper appreciation for the importance of financial accountability. To everyone who's followed this incredible journey with me, thank you for walking through this difficult chapter. If you're in a position where you suspect financial irregularities, trust your instincts, document what you find, seek professional advice, and remember that exposing fraud isn't a betrayal, it's a responsibility. If someone you trust holds a position of financial authority in your community, pay attention to the numbers. Ask questions. Request documentation. The people who have nothing to hide will appreciate your diligence, and the ones who get defensive might be the ones you need to worry about. If this story resonated with you, if you believe in the importance of financial transparency and community accountability, please hit that like button and share your own experiences in the comments below. Have you ever discovered someone in your community was abusing their position? How did you handle it? Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and ring that notification bell. Every week, we bring you stories about people who found the courage to speak truth to power, who protected their communities from abuse, and who proved that ordinary people can make extraordinary differences when they stand up for what's right. Keep questioning, keep verifying, and keep protecting the communities you care about. Justice doesn't happen automatically. It requires people willing to act when they discover wrongdoing. I'll see you in the next story, where we'll explore more incredible journeys of courage, accountability, and the power of standing up for what's right. Remember, when someone shows you who they really are through their actions, believe them. And when those actions harm others, speak up. Your voice might be the only thing standing between a criminal and their next victim.